PCN is brought to you in part by the following underwriters.
Welcome to PACTV Community News. We have a great show for you tonight with stories from Plymouth, Duxbury, Pembroke, and Kingston.
We'll visit the Manomet Bird Sanctuary in South Plymouth, meet some Warrior football players in Kingston, and attend a very fancy croquet tournament in Duxbury.
We'll visit the Dirty Water Distillery in Plymouth and meet some Mayflower descendants.
Town Talk comes from Pembroke this week. It's going to be a great show, and we'll begin with an architect's view of Pembroke's future. The Center of Pembroke could be getting a bit of a facelift in the future. It could be in the very near future if one local architect gets her way. Kim Sullivan Citroni, born and raised in Pembroke, wrote her thesis on this project in order to gain her master's in architecture at the University of Maryland, and just recently defended her thesis before a good-sized audience at the Pembroke Public Library.
Intrigued by the presentation, a good amount of time, probably a year. Well, thank you everybody for coming.
I chose to do this project because I think that Pembroke has a lot of really great aspects to it. The history, the culture, the ecology of the area, they're all very unique, and they're really strong features that are here, but you don't see that in the center of town. The center of town comes off as a little sparse. There's not a lot of activity here. The activity that is here is really strongly indicative of the community. So these things are huge assets in this town, and they should show through in the center. At the same time, the population is growing. There's going to be about 1,300 more people in the next 14 years in this town. Where are they going to go? We need to plan for that. What usually ends up happening is every time something comes up, something needs to be built. At that point, it's dealt with piecemeal. If you make a master plan for the town, everything fits in to a holistic vision for the town. Any special place you've ever been to, whether it's a city or a small town, has a big idea behind it that makes it special, and all of the elements fit into it. And so that's the idea of what I'm trying to do here. By doing this, every time a construction project comes up in the future, be it the community center or down the road the town hall or the police station or additional housing, those things fall into the master plan very easily. You don't have to start at square one every time. You already know what the location is and what you're trying to emphasize with the vision of the town. So the vision of this town is, what I'm proposing is to bring the unique ecology right through the center of town with a string of parks, and intersect that with kind of a denser village-like town center. There's plenty of space here in the center of town. Much of it is owned by the town, much of it is privately owned. So part of the vision that I came up with involves public-private partnerships. For example, there's a need for exhibition or larger meeting space here. And there's also a need for a community center. So why not build that into the community center and allow private organizations to lease out the space or organize weddings out of the space. With the string of parks, it would be a beautiful place for something like that, and it would raise money for the town. So now you have an income-generating community center, and it suddenly becomes a little bit less of a burden on the town. So the job of the architect is not only to design the built environment, it's to consider all of these diverse needs that go into it as well. This project focuses on the historic center of town, which is a quarter-mile by quarter-mile area, so that's small, but it relates to the rest of the town as well, because these new people are coming to town. There's going to be more young people and more seniors, so they have different housing needs than the typical single-family home, and that can be provided for here in a way that preserves open space in the rest of town. There's a lot of conservation land in town, and that is a huge asset here. Private developers may be able to develop a sewage treatment system in conjunction with the town that the town could then tap into for the properties around the ponds. And by doing that, it would clean up the ponds and bring health back to the ponds, and that's a big issue in the town too. Those ponds are what gives the town its special identity, and I'm trying to bring that back to Pembroke and make it something Pembroke can be proud of.
As the summer draws to a close, early fall becomes the best time to start watching for migrant birds. And if you're in the business of collecting data on those birds, then the Manomet Center for Conservation Sciences is the place to be. PCN recently headed out to the research lab that overlooks the ocean out in Manomet to meet an aviary scientist who gets up close and personal with our feathery flying friends on a daily basis.
This is actually a glacial terminal moraine from way back, and as we approach the old house, which was called Wide Water, built in 1896, then we get a spectacular view out over Cape Cod Bay, and we're looking right across to Cape Cod at that point. The main thing is that for over 45 years now we have been maintaining very fine nets on the property and doing research on migrant birds passing through in both spring and fall. This is the very beginning of fall, and so this is the best time for us to really start looking at migrant birds. With 45 years of data, we're able to see population increases and decreases. We put on US Fish and Wildlife bans. We know where the birds go, and so we're building up a tremendous amount of conservation biology information. And of course the goal is partly education of folks, and the other main goal is substantial conservation practices so that we know what we're doing, got the good science behind us, and then before we and other folks go out and spend money on conservation, we know what we're doing. One of the questions we always ask students when they come here from Manomet Elementary School, or students when they come from Wheaton College, is why do we ban birds? And one of the reasons to ban birds is to find out where they go. Each of the red pins here represents birds that were banded at Manomet since 1966. So what it does is it gives us an idea. All the red dots are birds heading south. Some of them spending the winter in the southern part of the US. Here we have an American robin all the way over in Texas on the Gulf Coast, for example. And some of the shorebirds from Plymouth Beach, where we've also done some banding over the years, are going right down into Central America. And in fact, all the way down south into Argentina and right down to Tierra del Fuego in the case of one species. So it gives us an idea of where birds go in the spring, in the fall, where they're breeding, what their routes are, and the timing of these migrations. If we do want to hold a bird just long enough to get a good camera shot of a bird or to take our own photographs, then we'll put them into our bird hotel. Here's a hotel, and we have 4 floors in the hotel. Each of these are individual compartments. I can hear somebody jumping around in here, and in the front, and here is a Carolina wren hiding behind the screen. They make a tea kettle, tea kettle, tea kettle, so and that would be the adult male, and they'll make that little tea kettle song in people's backyard. When birds come back, they come right back here, and they come in an individual cloth bag like this. And so we have a bird right here who has just come back from the net run. He's been processed. He's got his US Fish and Wildlife Service band on, and then each individual bird comes out in a banding grip. And George here is probably going to squawk. George, are you going to squawk? No, he's not. He's going to be good. We'll turn on some lights, and under the lights here you can see that this grey catbird, which is one of our iconic birds. This is a bird that breeds on the property, that migrates through in large numbers in spring and fall. Wow, that's the catbird noise. Wow. And this is actually an immature catbird. He looks a little bit ratty, I have to say, and that's because he's molting out of his fluffy juvenile feathers into his adult feathers. We have a release hatch right here. You open the release hatch, and through the rubber flange, then the bird will actually sit in this wooden box, and be ready to take off in his own good time and fly away. So we'll put him out here. He box until he's good and ready, and when he's ready, he flies away.
Have you ever been to a croquet tournament? It sounds about as exciting as a crochet tournament, right? Well, the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society found a way to breathe some life into the idea as they held their 4th annual croquet tournament at the King Caesar House recently. Our own Brian Sullivan was there for the creative white shirt affair.
The registration starts at 8:50.
If you were expecting to see Jay Gatsby, Daisy Buchanan, Nick Carraway, or at least their lookalikes, you would have been in the right place at a recent gathering in Duxbury. On August 18th, the 4th annual Wicked Wickets Croquet Tournament packed them in to raise money for the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society. As you look around, there's definitely a great Gatsby-type feel to the event. In fact, the invitation suggested the attire is creative white. Well, my creative white is cream. It's the best I could do. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun getting dressed up, and of course, it's all for a good cause.
This is to benefit the Duxbury Historical Society. They're the ones who take care of this beautiful house, the King Caesar House. They have 4 houses in town, and this is one of their biggest events, and it's so much fun because if you just look around, it's kind of like we're in a movie right now. It's crazy.
That's Reagan Peterman. She co-chaired the event this year after winning last year's tournament.
This is my first year to co-chair the event. I got roped into it by Ed Quinones. He's my other chairman because I was last year's champion, and it was our first big event to do in the town of Duxbury. My husband Mark and I had just moved into town, and my friend Nancy Rufo and her husband Mike, who are our teammates, last year's champions as well, decided to ask us if we wanted to do the croquet tournament, and we came, and it was amazing.
While the bumpy, uneven lawn at the King Caesar House may not have measured up to professional-grade croquet standards, they did still bring in a couple of experts to explain the ins and outs of the fast-paced croquet game being played this afternoon. Bob Kroger has been playing croquet for 51 years and has won several tournaments, so it's safe to say that puts him in the expert category.
I'm the event director. I know the version of the game that is most appropriate for a wonderful event such as this. We're playing golf croquet, very fast-paced game, no sitting around, constant action, perfect when you have 96 people. And we have a big crowd here today.
If you thought this was going to be like the croquet you played in your grandmother's backyard as a kid, you'd better think again.
This is just 1 stroke per turn. In backyard croquet, you can have several strokes in a turn. So 1 stroke per turn no matter what you do. The other thing is, in the backyard game, you've got to make all the wickets. Here, only 1 ball has to make the contested wicket, then everyone goes to the next. It's very much like Ryder Cup golf.
Not only is the scoring a bit tricky, but there's a time limit as well.
The scoring is done with whoever makes the contested wicket gets 1 wicket point. First to 4 wins. Or if 20 minutes expires before you get to 4, whoever has the most points at the end of time.
All the rules aside, the main goal is for everyone to just have fun. Erin McGew is the executive director of the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society. She explains why they picked croquet to begin with for the fundraising event.
I think it's a little bit different. It's exciting. It allows people to come in teams and to play together with their friends. It brings people into the society and allows them to enjoy this beautiful property that we're here enjoying the party as well as the games.
The games carried on until the early evening before they eventually had a shootout between the top teams to decide who would be this year's tournament champion. Reporting from the big croquet tournament here at the King Caesar House in Duxbury, I'm Brian Sullivan, PACTV Community News.
With the school year just starting and fall around the corner, football season kicks into high gear. PCN headed to the Pottle Street Athletic Fields in Kingston to check out a training day for youth football of all ages.
When the fall rolls around, it means one thing for millions of Americans on the great American sports calendar, and that's football. Not just college football and pro football, it means football for all ages and levels. Here at the Opachinski Sports Complex, otherwise known as the Pottle Street Fields, you can find all 4 age groups playing from the Mighty Mites right up to the midgets.
On the far end of the field, we have the Mighty Mites. Those are the little guys. It's really a beginner instructional league.
Mark McGarry is one of the coaches for the Mighty Mites. He sees the long-term benefits of the youth football program.
I got a little boy on the team. We got 21 guys with us. If said they're all about 6, 7 years old, if they stay with each other for the next 12, 13 years when they're all seniors in high school, that they'll all be playing together, and it's going to be one heck of a senior team to be reckoned with.
And they move up to the Mites, which is a competitive league. It's split into varsity and JV. In the middle, we have the Pee Wee division. That's the 5th and 6th graders. And that gets a little bit more competitive. The schemes change a little bit more. The rules change within the league.
Get rid of them! Get rid of them! Stand your ground!
And on the far end, we have the midgets. That's the most competitive that we have before high school, and that's 7th and 8th grade.
The midgets are competitive, but anyone with the skill set and desire to play will play, as evidenced by this young lady here wearing number 48. Not lost in all of this is the need for safety, with the number of reported football-related concussions on the rise in recent years. As head football coordinator for the Tri-Town League, Alex Gabra makes sure that everyone is on the same page with the latest testing.
We strive and we try to train the coaches to figure out if, to identify a possible concussion with any of the players. We make sure that all the coaches go through an online course, sign off and get a certificate that basically shows that they've completed the course and they're aware of how to identify these potential concussions. We also try to have the state-of-the-art equipment for the kids, shoulder pads, helmets. Every year we have the helmets reconditioned, so that way they're all certified, ready to go for the year, all cleaned, making sure that they're ready to go for the kids for the upcoming season.
The Tri-Town League includes Halifax, Plimpton, and Kingston, which proves to be beneficial for certain towns that may not have the overall numbers for the sport or even have certain sports in their athletic programs.
Having 3 towns together really provides opportunity for towns that wouldn't necessarily have it. I know with Plimpton, we have baseball, we don't have football. Basketball was just included with Silver Lake as well, because before that there's just so few kids, they end up playing each other over and over again. So it brings in better competition for the entire region. We have more kids to choose from, makes it a little bit more competitive against some of the towns that have 300 kids in the program.
Reporting from Kingston, I'm Brian Sullivan, PACTV Community News.
Good job, excellent. That's the way to keep.
PCN met up with a pair of brothers-in-law, one with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and the other with a PhD in physics. What else would they do with those skills but combine them to embark on a rum distillery endeavor? This little upstart in the heart of downtown Plymouth, in a nondescript building that could easily be mistaken for being abandoned. The rum being made here gives a nod to the history of Plymouth's nautical rope-making community, and we got a chance to see how it gets made.
One of our big tie-ins to Plymouth, and we've decided to eschew the Pilgrim and Mayflower kind of obvious thing that's covered elsewhere, we think. We looked at Cordage Park as kind of a very interesting part of history of Plymouth. It was one of the largest rope factories in the world. The Constitution used it. All the cool skippers in the world used their rope. Our rum line is based on knots, and that's a nod to Cordage Park. So each one of our rums have a different type of knot. The first one that we made is the what knot, and then we're going to an amber rum. It's going to be called Better Knot, and then we're saving the name Frayed Knot for some future product. Rum is made from molasses, water, and yeast, and some nutrients. So we start with a 55-gallon barrel of molasses. We take it over here to our to this 350-gallon cooker that we add 250 gallons of water to, the 55 gallons of molasses that is actually forklifted to into the actual vessel itself. It's heated up to 160 degrees. I take a canoe paddle and I mix it all together by hand until it's all blended. And then take that and we crash cool it down through this crash cooler right here. That knocks it down to about 100 degrees for us. It comes in at about 160 degrees, leaves at about 100, and then we pour it into one of these two fermenters. Once it gets down to about 80 degrees, a little bit less, we take our yeast and we pitch the yeast in there. You know, basically when you're making any type of alcohol, all you're doing is you're introducing yeast to a sugar. The byproduct of that yeast eating the sugar is alcohol and carbon dioxide. So at the end of my fermentation part, I have 750 gallons of 8% low beer. I then take that and it goes through the still in two passes actually. We have a what's called a strip run, and then we have a spirit run. The spirit run is much more exacting. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to extract the alcohols out of it. There's many different alcohols. I extract the alcohols out of it in a very slow fashion so then I can do what's called the cuts. So what I'm doing in my kind of skill as a distiller is doing those cuts and determining what the rum is going to be, you know, in the middle of that run itself. So eventually what will happen is this 80% alcohol gets collected, and then I'll make my determination of what's going to end up in my rum bottle, and then I dilute that down to the 40% alcohol that ends up on the shelf. When we're done making rum or any of our product, it goes into a big barrel and it gets forklifted up. We love our forklift. And then it goes into one of these bottlers right here. And each bottle is then basically you just place it on the bottler and it fills up for us. When that's done, it comes over to this section over here where we have our labeler. Zip, zip, we got our labels on there. We cork it, and then we put a cap on it, like that. And then it goes into this thing, and that heat shrinks it for us. And we're done. It's all done by hand. Family and friends, we cajole them into coming down and doing that with us.
As part of the 6-day 40th Triennial Congress for the General Society of Mayflower Descendants, the group gathered at the Mayflower Society House recently for the Pilgrim Progress. The event was a memorial procession which led members from the Society House to Coles Hill, to the Church of the Pilgrimage, and back to their starting point for refreshments. Of course, the members were encouraged to wear pilgrim-style clothing. PCN's own Brian Sullivan was there to get the story.
On Sunday, September 8th, the General Society of Mayflower Descendants gathered at the Mayflower Society House to take part in the Pilgrim Progress, a memorial procession which wouldn't be complete without the proper attire. The Society House was kind enough to provide nearly everyone there with 17th century pilgrim garb. They even had clothes for the little ones. Folks had to be quick to get the costume that best suited their character.
Well, I've been a member of the General Society of Mayflower Descendants for several years. My middle name is Standish. I'm dressed, I'm descended from Miles Standish. I have the privilege of wearing a costume that resembles what he might have worn 400 years ago.
Sunday's gathering landed right in the middle of the 6-day 40th Triennial Congress for the Descendants. The society is comprised of people from all 50 states as well as Canada. No state was too far for this get-together.
I came from California today to honor my pilgrim ancestors, Richard Moore, Richard Warren, and James Chilton. And it's very exciting to be here and march in Pilgrim's Progress.
We're from Nashville, Tennessee, actually the town of Franklin, and we came out for the Descendants of the Mayflower celebration. They're 400 years strong now. And we're just having a really good time seeing all of the history in this area, you know, and we're learning a lot at the same time.
From here, the procession moves just up the road to Coles Hill, where many of the pilgrims were buried during their first winter here. In fact, they'll read off a list of the names of those who left no descendants, as well as those who did have a legacy.
The pilgrim remains buried under this monument were uncovered on May 23rd, 1855.
Several of the pilgrims whose names appear in this monument left no one behind. Of course, there were many more whose names did carry on, and most of the people in attendance could trace their lineage to those very names. 2 of the descendants were appointed to read off the names for both groups as part of the commemorative ceremony.
William Holbeck,
Solomon Farr, John Rigsdale, and Alice, his wife.
The procession marched onwards to the Church of the Pilgrimage for a prayer and their final ceremony. After a day of marching in the heat wearing those heavy clothes, it was time for the descendants to descend upon the buffet table back at the Society House. There were more people in attendance than had been anticipated, which is a good sign for the Society because their numbers appear to be growing. For Ben Proctor, traveling to Plymouth for the event was a homecoming of sorts.
I came in from Maryland, came in 2 days ago. I live in the Baltimore area and made it up in about 9 hours. So everything went well. It was a beautiful drive, and my family and I, we vacation here in Plymouth every year for 3 weeks, and just being here in Plymouth, I love very much. My father was born and raised here, and it's like my second home.
For Annie John, the short plane ride from D.C. served a worthwhile purpose.
I'm really excited about it because I'm going to be the governor of the DC Society starting at the end of the year, and I won't have a Congress during my term, so I felt like it was important that I come to this one specifically. And I think it was an hour and a half on the plane up from DC.
Reporting from the Mayflower Society House here in downtown Plymouth, I'm Brian Sullivan, PACTV Community News.
Town Talk this week takes us to Pembroke Town Hall to meet up with Ed Thorne.
Well, hi, folks. Welcome to another installment of bringing you up to date and what's going to happen in Pembroke during the month of September. Obviously, the big thing that we've got on the horizon is the special town meeting at the end of October. So we'll putting together all of the departmental requests and requests by the Community Preservation Commission, as well as some other sorted articles to be presented to the selectmen in the next couple of weeks for their final approval of the warrant. And 3 of those that will be of special interest will be improvements to the beaches at 3 locations. The current Little Sandy bottom pond, we have our town landing program, swim program that's there, and this is going to act on some improvements there. And then we have 2 new locations in town that one has been owned by the town for quite some time, another has just been donated by the Furnace Pond Community Improvement Association to the Conservation Commission. In both locations, which is Stetson Pond and Furnace Pond, we're thinking about improving the beach location, having some portable restrooms available, as well as some docks that we have located at the Little Sandy and at the Town Landing. Those polyurethane docks have become a welcome addition to the Town Landing at Oldham and Little Sandy, and the public has been very appreciative of it, and they've been well received. So we're thinking that Furnace Pond and Stetson Pond are going to benefit from having these improvements as well. At the same time that we're looking at the special town meeting in October, we're gearing up for the fiscal year 2016 budget system. We're just entering the FY15 budget cycle right now, but we understand that FY16 might be tougher financially on us, so we're really going to be scrutinizing all the town departments and as well as the school department, and trying to put together a balanced budget by the 1st of January. All of our departments right now are working on putting together the FY16 draft budget so that we can work on it this winter as well. So basically those are the items that we'll be going to working on here in the town of Pembroke, so that hopefully we will have an enjoyable spring and summer for those people that are going to be visiting our ponds next summer, and hopefully they'll enjoy the improvements that we're going to make. So until the next time, this is Ed Thorne for the town of Pembroke.
Thanks for watching this week's show. Replay times have changed and are listed on our website, PACTV.org, or you can catch us on YouTube by searching for the PACTV Community News channel.
And be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to receive previews and links to all our stories.
Our new show, PCN In Depth, will premiere this Friday night, September 19th at 7 p.m. This show will take a closer look into a specific topic each month with dynamic guests and videos that highlight interests from our communities. We're very excited for our first episode, which will take an in-depth look at the talented and lively local music scene.
So be sure to watch PCN In Depth, and we'll be back next week for another edition of PCN. See you then.